Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an extremely expensive card game. Duelists will spend thousands of dollars just to compete at a high level, and I'm here to prove even a budget duelist can succeed. If you enjoy this video and you'd like to see more, it would really mean a lot to me if you would subscribe. These videos take a lot of time to make, and each subscriber really pushes me to make the best content I can. Alright, let's get into that video. Alrighty, getting into the deck profile, we have some changes, but our main deck lineup is pretty similar. We definitely have the 3 copies of Pudica, we have our 3 copies of Myrmeleo, and we have our 3 copies of Mantis. These are just like the most important starters of the deck. We have our best extender in the deck in Arachnocampa. We also have the 2 Dionea, the 1 Jinlicia, and the 1 Vesiculio. I think this lineup of 16 Traptrix monsters is about the best you can get. You might reduce some depending on what extra cards you have, but for me this is the best lineup we have right now until we get stuff like Parallel Exceed or some of the better cards that we're looking into. Along with that, we have our 2 copies of Traptrip Garden. That's our only main strategy spell that we're playing still. Getting on into our trap lineup, we have the 3 copies of Holtia. This is definitely the best card in the deck. We have 2 copies of Gravedigger's Trap Hole and 2 copies of Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare. We need 2 copies of Gravediggers to beat Nibiru if we draw a copy, and Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare is pretty much just the best trap hole we have access to. We're playing 1 time space trap hole. I saw this in a couple lists, decided to try it out, and it does actually make a difference. It is kind of better than bottomless, so that's taking that space. We cut down to 1 Floodgate and 1 Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare, and we are still on the 1 Trap Hole of Spikes. I think it's funny and it does catch a lot of people off guard. Getting on into our kind of staple cards, we actually upped our staple card count, and the main deck count actually went up to 42 just to fit everything. So we have 3 copies of Book of Eclipse. This is important because it beats the Kashtira board and it also really hurts the Sprite board. We subbed out our 3 copies of Raigeki for this. I think this is better than Raigeki because it's decent going first and second, because going second, it clears a lot of effect negates like Baron, and it clears things like Mirror Jade, but it also, we can set it and it interrupts our opponent on their turn as well. We have the 3 copies of Ash Blossom and the 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Still just kind of the best cards we have access to. And then we did throw in the 3 copies of Effect Veiler. So this isn't the greatest against Kashtira specifically because we can't send it to graveyard for cost under Macrocosmos, but we can still use it to interrupt things like the Unicorn. We can use it to stop things like the Arise Heart, making its level 7, so they just have a level 4 just on board. And also, it is just a really good card. It is just a negate, which we don't have access to a lot of. And then our 42nd card is Pankratops. I really wanted to try it out in the deck. I think it has a lot of utility, especially being Earth, considering what we got in the last episode. And that is the main deck. Like I said, I finally upped it to 42 cards. I was trying to figure out what to cut. I considered cutting like Mantis and Pudica down by 1 copy, but I really like the Traptrix lineups and I really wanted more cards. I'm noticing that in playtesting, the additional hand traps kind of do get a little cloggy, so we might go either down to 40 again, or we might up our Traptrix count, but we'll have to see. Getting on into the side deck, not too much surprising. We have our triple Grandhorn and our triple 7 tools. These are just kind of like the best cards we have right now. We're looking into getting more. And we have our triple Kumongous. This is the best kaiju we have access to, and I do really think kaijus are getting stronger as Kashtira is moving to the Arise Heart Pass boards as opposed to the, X amount Zone Lock boards. So this gives us a response if they think we are on Nibiru. So then for our last 6 cards, we have our 2 Heavy Storm Dusters and our 1 Feather Duster. This gives us 3 back row removal if we go up against a back row deck like Labyrinth. And we also have our 2 Dimensional Barriers, but our last card is actually a Trap Trick. So what this does is against Branded, we have 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier, and against Labyrinth, we have 3 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. So depending on the matchup, we actually have additional copies if we really need to get to something. All right, getting on into the extra deck, we obviously have our triple copies of Sarah. I think after playing this deck for a while, I don't think I'm ever going to cut Sarah down to 2. It just doesn't make any sense. Every time I have had a Sarah banished off of a Diabolicis, the Mind Hacker, I've always wanted the 3rd one, so I think we're keeping it at 3. We do have the 1 Cucularia, we have the 1 Adipus, and new inclusion, we have the 1 Ausa, the Earth Charmer. You'll see in the games that in my testing this comes up a lot, both against Kashtira and the Mirror Match, but also in a lot of just rogue matchups. There's a lot of Earth monsters that we can summon back. And then our final link, we have our Borrelsword Dragon. This is going to be our boss monster. This is going to be how we're going to seal up a lot of games that we don't really want to summon Adipus for. And then getting on into the XYZs, we are playing 2 Rafflesia. I was really struggling for extract space, and I just decided that Rafflesia was the best one, so we're keeping Rafflesia. We have 2 Pangicula, and then the down to 1 is Allomeris. It feels kind of bad because Allomeris is really good sometimes. You just need that Reborn, you need that extra monster. However, Pangicula is just such a great effect, and Rafflesia is just such a good card. We need that Interruptions. So that's going to be our lineup for Trap Tricks. And then getting on to our additional ones, we have our 1 Silent Honoric, we have our 1 Vespinato, and we do have our Redoer. This card is just so great in this deck. Making it with a Holtea gives you an interaction like turn 1, and you'll see in the game that it does actually come up that we can make it with a trap. It's so good for this deck. So that's the deck. Like I said, I think the inclusion of more staple cards in the main deck makes it a little bit more cloggy. We get some hands that we don't really know what to do with, and you'll probably see that in the game. So we'll see if this is really good enough. I'm still playing around with the deck, and I got some very interesting ideas for the deck going forward, but we'll have to see. Anyways, let's go ahead and get on the game and show you guys what this deck can do. Alright, so unfortunately I didn't get to go to locals this week, but I've done a lot of testing with the deck online, and I decided to record a DV match against my boy John. He's bringing Dino as one of his favorite decks, and he wins RPS and elects to go first. We draw our hand and it's pretty good, but unfortunately for John, he bricks and passes on a single set back row. The turn comes to us and we draw a trap card, which is perfect. We go standby main and we lead with a normal summon of Mantis. Attempting to activate its effect, it is met by an Ash Blossom. Under normal circumstances, we'd be ending on Sarah, but with Garden in hand, we link for Sarah and normal summon our second Mantis, which isn't actually once per turn. We grab Arachnocampa off Mantis and trigger Sarah on resolution to set Holtea. We read that our opponent has to be breaking on something, so even on a completely open board where we can totally assemble lethal, we play it safe and special summon Arachnocampa, overlaying it and Mantis into Rafflesia. We have a completely correct read as our opponent activates Nibiru, which we negate with Rafflesia thanks to a second Gravedigger's Trap Hole in our deck, burning our opponent for 2,000 in the process, and that is why we played 2. Now that we're safe from that, we activate Holtea, pitching Gravedigger's Trap Hole in hand. We trigger Sarah to summon, and because I'm afraid the back row might be something weird, we summon Myrmelio to destroy it. It wasn't evenly matched, so I'm glad we cleared that, but we are locked by the effect of Arachnocampa, so we overlay for Pangicula, but with both our Gravediggers in grave, we are vulnerable to the known Nibiru. After hitting for 3,300, we pass the turn. Our opponent leads with setting a card and activating True King Lithosajum in his hand. Looking back on this, it was actually not a legal activation since our opponent sent 2 light monsters to grave, but we shuffle it back into deck with Rafflesia, binning Time Space Trap Hole, and cleaned up on the next turn, so it didn't really matter. Going into game 2, we side in some Kaijus for our evenly match, thinking we're going second so we have a way to deal with Logia or Dolka, but our opponent flips the script and makes us go first. We draw our hand and it is just the worst pain I've ever had playing 13 going second cards. I'm actually kind of reconsidering at this point. I'm going to save you all the pain of this game, but long story short, we spent about 5 turns passing back and forth, me hand-trapping John and him just chipping away at our life points every turn with his normal. Going into game 3, we decide to side in our Grand Horn of Heavens, our Heavy Storm Duster, and the Trap Tricks for our books and Kaijus. We do this so we have more traps to pitch with Holtea. We go first, and thank God we have plays. We lead with Pudica, and that does get met with an Ash Blossom, but thankfully we have Holtea and a trap in hand. So we link into Sarah, set the Holtea, activate it, triggering Sarah to summon Dionea, reset the Trap Hole in the grave, we set a Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare, we overlay into Rafflesia, and we pass the turn. Our opponent leads with a special summon of Pankratops, which we allow, saving Rafflesia's effect for something better. Activating Lost World and normal summoning Ovi, we neglect to activate Rafflesia's effect on summon, and we allow our opponent to get to all the effects he could ever want. We do negate the Misk with Rafflesia, so our other interruptions are live, however it doesn't stop the Misk Grave effect. But on the resolution of Rafflesia, we trigger Sarah to set Holtea, after which our opponent activates Double Evolution Pill, banishing an Ash Blossom and the Misk to summon a UCT from deck. And here is where the token is causing quite a few problems. We can't activate the set Terrifying Trap Hole to destroy the UCT, so we have to wait for it to activate one of its effects so we can destroy it with the Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare. Our opponent triggers Ovi to destroy the token, protects it with Lost World, destroying Baby Sarosaurus from deck. Triggering the baby, he summons Scrap Raptor, destroying itself to grab Chimera, an additional normal summon of Chimera to summon back the Scrap Raptor. And here he overlays for Logia, which presents a rather large large problem. We can no longer use any of our traps to stop the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. Our opponent goes to battle here and declares an attack into the token. Here we do something funny. On attack declaration, we activate Holtea, baiting the Logia. The hope is that he negates the Holtea in graveyard. We chain Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare to negate and destroy it, and then on resolution we are clear to use our interactions. However, he lets it goes through and redeclares on the token. On a new chain, since we don't have a token anymore, we actually get to trigger Putica's effect to banish the Logia, and then on the next turn when he attacks, we use Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare to negate and destroy the UCT when it uses its effect. We could have used Terrifying Trap Hole Nightmare here to force the Pankratops, but I see a funnier line. We take some more damage, and then if the turn passes back to us. We draw, and in standby, our opponent summons back the Logia from the Putica. We start the turn by linking into Ausa the Earth Charmer, so we can summon our own copy of Pankratops from our hand. We trigger Ausa to summon back the Scrap Chimera on the field. We use Pankratops targeting our opponent's Pankratops to force it out. He chains it to pop our Rafflesia, but normal summoning Myrmelio, we activate the effect to add a trap hole, after which we get drolled. We link summon Sarah with the Myrmelio. We activate Holtea, using Sarah to summon Myrmelio to destroy the Lost World, just so we get our attack back. We set a card off of Sarah's, which doesn't matter because we make Redoer, and we link Ausa, Sarah, and Scrap Chimera into a Boral Sword drag. We spin the Logia with Redoer since we did make it with Holtea, and we clean up the very close game 3. So even though that game wasn't against something like Branded Despia or Kashtira, which is more meta, it still tells us a lot about the game and where we need to improve. One of the big things that you saw is our normal summon is just such an ash magnet, and without the extenders in hand, we can't really do a whole lot. And that's been Traptrix's modus operandi for quite a while. So I have some ideas on how to improve that. The most people are going with Parallel Exceed, however, I think we have some other much cheaper options that we can go for that also gives us extra link material for a interesting idea that I have. Now I know a lot of people have probably seen the Therion Traptrix deck that is going around, and I have to say I don't really like that concept. I think it introduces way too much inconsistency with 3 or 4 main deck bricks. Along with that, Aromatherapy Jasmine is just way too outside of our scope right now. The thing shot up to $15, and we'd have to trade probably our entire binder plus half of our deck to get it at this point. So for right now, we're going to focus on some cheaper options, but like I said, I have some ideas, and we're going to hope that we can make some really good trades coming into episode 5. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.